Welcome to lecture video number 1, part 2. Topics to be discussed in this lecture video are the following: franchise tax, overseas communication tax, tax on banks and non-bank financial intermediaries performing quasi-banking functions, and tax on other non-bank financial intermediaries.
What is a franchise tax? A franchise tax is a percentage tax imposed on franchise grantees of radio and or television broadcasting companies wherein its gross receipts in a year does not or do not exceed 10 million pesos. And also franchise grantees of gas and water utilities. As you can see on the board, these are the only two coverage of your franchise tax. Which means na pag franchise grantee ka ng electricity, hindi ka masasubject sa franchise tax. Bakit? Because you do not belong in this category. Take note, these are the only two franchise grantees, types of franchise grantees na masasubject sa franchise tax natin. We have two franchise tax rates. First, let's see radio and or television broadcasting companies. Say for example, ABC Broadcasting Company has an annual gross receipt of 12 million pesos in the year 2018. In the year 2018, thus your ABC Broadcasting Company will be subject to 3% franchise tax. The answer is no. Why? Because lagpas siya sa 10 million pesos na threshold, which means it will be subjected sa ating value-added tax. E paano if ang ABC Broadcasting Company for the entire season or entire years na nag-ooperate siya, never siya lumagpas sa 10 million pesos? Which means, for 2018, say for example, the annual gross receipts is only 6 million pesos. Pwede po ba siyang masubject sa franchise tax? Of course, yes, because hindi siya lagpas sa 10 million threshold. Pwede rin ba siyang mag-opt for 12% VAT? Actually, yes. Which means, if you wanted to be taxed to 3% percentage tax under your franchise tax, if you were a broadcasting company for radio and or television, kailangan hindi ka rin nag-opt maging VAT registered. So let us add another condition to this. Radio and or television broadcasting companies which annual gross receipts do not exceed 10 million pesos, and of course, the company did not opt to become a VAT taxpayer. Next, 2% for your gas and water utilities franchisees. Let us proceed to your example for franchise tax. Alright, so number 1 here, A is a holder of franchise to sell electricity. In a particular quarter, its gross receipts amounted to 2 million pesos from sale of electricity. It has also receipts from the lease of its auditorium and thereafter amounting to 600,000 pesos. The percentage tax due for the quarter is, you are asked of the percentage tax due. As you can see in the problem, that the franchise grantee is a franchise grantee of an electricity, which means selling of electricity. Well, does it belong to our category for our franchise tax qualifier? I think no, because radio and or TV broadcasting companies and your gas and water utilities only. So, how much is the percentage tax? Magkano percentage tax? Walang percentage tax. Bakit? Hindi po siya kasama sa enumerate natin kanina. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. Number 2A is a radio TV broadcasting franchise grantee. Eto pasok ha. Pag ang question dito ay percentage tax, pasok siya sa ating first category. Let's see, ano yung question? The franchise tax due for the first quarter, which means franchise tax due, percentage tax yung hinahanap. Tignan natin if pasok siya sa ating kondisyon na hindi dapat lagpas sa 10 million pesos at hindi niya enough maging VAT taxpayer. During the preceding year, its gross receipts did not exceed 10 million pesos. Hindi lagpas sa 10 million pesos kaya pasok siya. During the first quarter of the current year, it has the following data. So as you can see in your handouts, we have the following data. Gross sale of airtime, we have 10 million pesos. Gross receipt, use of radio stations facilities is 500,000 pesos. And my business expenses. However, dito nakasulat 700,000 pesos. Ngayon tatanungin niyo ako, bakit ko hindi nilagyan ng value ang ating business expenses here for solving for our tax base? Bakit nga ba? It's because the tax base is gross receipts, which means again that hindi natin kailangan i-deduct ang mga expenses or anumang deductions. Okay, so 2 million plus 500,000 pesos, we have 2,500,000 pesos. This is now your tax base, the gross receipts, both in your sale of airtime for television and your radio naman na gross receipts. 2,500,000 times your 3%, you get a percentage tax or a franchise tax of 75,000 pesos. Okay, this is your franchise tax of 75,000 pesos. Let us proceed to your example number 3. Radio station DZWT has an annual gross receipts ranging from 4 million pesos to 5 million pesos. Tignan natin muna yung question. The question is how much franchise tax is payable by DZWT, which means ina-ask dito yung percentage tax. And tamang-tama kasi yung DZWT ay isang radio station, which means pasok siya sa first category. However, with pending condition. Tignan natin if yung annual gross receipts niya ay hindi lagpas. So sabi dito, hindi rin lagpas because range niya ay from 4 million pesos lang to 5 million pesos, which means malayo pa po siya sa 10 million pesos. During the month, it had a gross receipts from advertisements of 330,000 pesos. Yung radio station natin sa month na ito ay naka-earn siya ng 330,000 pesos net of tax, which means exclusive of tax. Walang kahit anumang tax na nakapatong dyan. While the disbursement subject to VAT amounted to 224,000 inclusive of tax. Are we concerned pa sa ganitong data? I think no. We are not concerned about disbursement because ang tax base nga natin ay ang ating gross receipts, which means hindi kailangan magdeduct. Next, how much franchise tax is payable by DZWT? Ina-ask ka lang if magkano yung franchise tax na babayaran mo. So we have here our gross receipts from the advertisements of the radio station. We have 330,000 pesos. It is enough? Yes, enough na yung data ito. Data na ito because this is already your gross receipts for the month. Times ang ating percentage tax rate for radio broadcasting, radio and TV broadcasting company, 3%. We use 3%. So 330,000 pesos times 0.03, our percentage tax to be paid by DZWT for such month of transaction would be 9,900 pesos. Now, let us continue. Let us now have an example of your franchise tax. The franchise grantees naman natin ay gas and or water utilities. Tingnan natin. Number 4, Tubig Company, a public service company, is a holder of a franchise to engage in the business of supplying water to several towns and cities in Luzon. As recorded in its books during the month, its total gross receipts from the sale of water amounted to 2,500,000 pesos, while the receipts from rental of equipment and other services was 280,000 pesos. The operating expenses amounted to 2 million pesos, 11% of which was paid to VAT registered persons. How much is the percentage tax due? Alright, so ina-ask ka dito of your percentage tax due knowing that your franchise grantee is a franchise grantee of water. Okay, pasok ba ang water? Yes, pasok na pasok. Meron bang threshold for water na franchise grantee? No. Only lang sa ating radio and or television broadcasting companies yung threshold na 10 million pesos. However, we have problem over here stating na 2,550,000 naman is ang gross receipts from sale of water. But meron pa siyang additional receipt from the sale of equipment. Ano ba yung ating i-follow? Would it be 2,550,000 plus 2 million or 2,550,000 pesos lang times our 2%? Actually, we are only up to the gross receipts from the main operation ng pagpa-franchise na, which is your franchise of water. That means sa water lang na gross receipts. We have 2,550,000 pesos. I'll just change this because there's a mistake that I have written on the board. So 2,550,000 pesos times 2%. Why do we use 2%? Iba po yung rate ng ating radio at TV kaysa naman sa ating gas and water. 2%, mas mababa. So 2,550,000 pesos times your 2% of franchise tax for water utilities. So we have 51,000 pesos. So our franchise tax for this transaction is 51,000 pesos. Let us now proceed to your fifth type of your percentage tax, which is the overseas communication tax. Overseas communication tax is a percentage tax imposed on overseas dispatch, message, or conversation transmitted from the Philippines by telephone, telegraph, telewriter exchange, wireless, and other communication equipment services, which means the call originated from the Philippines. Nanggaling po ang tawag sa Pilipinas, papuntang abroad. At ano naman po yung ating basihan ng 10% na ating overseas communication tax? That would be your amount paid for the service. I will give an example. For example, I am located here in the Philippines at saka yung aking mom ay nasa United States of America. One day, I feel like I missed my mom so much that I needed to call her using my mobile phone. Why mobile phone? Because I want to let her feel that she is special to me, di ba? Parang ang dali-dali naman if I'll do the messenger, right? So, in this case, gusto ko siyang tawagan. So, I called her. I called her and said, Mom, I miss you so much. And then, nagchika kami. Marami kaming pinag-usapan hanggang sa I checked my balance and meron akong 5,000 pesos na kailangan bayaran. 5,000 pesos na kailangan ko siyang bayaran, of course, kasi I had to call my mom. So, in this case, from the Philippines yung call, tumawag ako abroad, USA. Papatungan ba ako ng 10%? Yes, papatungan ako ng 10%. Sino magbabayad? Ako ang magbabayad, hindi yung service provider. So, 10% of amount paid for the service. So, 10% of your 5,000 pesos would be 500 pesos. So, on top of it, meron pa akong babayarang 10%. So, all in all, because I wanted to make my mom feel special during that day, so I had to pay a consequence of 5,500 pesos. Okay? How about if si mom naman yung tumawag sa akin kasi it's my birthday? That means the call originated from the USA. Ang tawag ay nanggaling sa USA. At ako na located sa Philippines, ako yung nakatanggap ng tawag. Which means, from the USA going to the Philippines, meron bang 10% na i-charge sa tawag na galing sa USA? The answer is no. Walang papatungan na 10% overseas communication tax because hindi yan ang cover ng ating overseas communication tax. Yung cover lang ng ating overseas communication tax ay lahat ng mga tawag na coming here from the Philippines going to abroad. Dito sa Pilipinas nag-originate and sa abroad ang tinatawagan. Meron exception or meron mga organizations, mga tao na hindi subject sa ating overseas communication tax. Sino-sino sila? First, the Philippine government or any of its political subdivisions or instrumentalities. Take note ha, Philippine government, hindi Philippine government employees. For example, naglatrabaho ako sa gobyerno, I had to call my mom outside kasi nga miss ko siya. Will I not be subject to 10% kasi sabihin ko, empleyado ako ng gobyerno? No, that is your personal transaction. And the government does not mean that it is the government employee too. Your government is independent from your doings. Kaya subject ka. But if the Philippine government has to have a call outside of the country because meron silang pinag-uusapan ng mga organizations outside the country, so wala yung overseas communication tax. Next is diplomatic services also by the government, public international organizations, or any of their agencies based in the Philippines enjoying privileges, exemptions, immunities which the Philippine government is committed to recognize pursuant to international agreements. So we have public international organizations na meron din tayong mga immunities and privileges na kailangan i-recognize sa kanila kasi kung tayo doon, dire-recognize din tayo nila. Next is the news services for messages which deal exclusively with the collection of news items for or the dissemination of news item through public press, radio, or television broadcasting, or news sticker service furnishing a general news service similar to that of the public press. Okay, simple. Ang haba nito pero simple lang. The scenario here is, for example, I am in the news team of ABC broadcasting company. I have to take a call or make a call in your, for example, in UAE. Kailangan ko mag-update because I have to report the situation of our OFWs or overseas Filipino workers doon. Lalo ngayong COVID, kailangan malaman natin if kamusta sila, if kamusta yung case doon, if there are positive Filipinos from COVID or health workers na nag-work sa UAE. Okay? So I have to get news using a phone call, of course. Kailangan ba akong taksan or kailangan bang taksan yung company kasi I had to make the call? The answer is no. Why? These are purely calls na needed in order for the information to be collected. In order for the information collected to relay also to the public. And with that, the public will be able to be informed and knowledgeable of what is happening sa ating mga kababayan outside of the country. Okay? So purely for the benefit rin ng ating public. In this case, for example, I am a news anchor. I had to call my friend outside the Philippines. Kailangan ko lang kamusta? Kailangan ko rin mag-catch up sa kanya. So, do I really have to pay for my overseas communication tax if I do that call? Of course, yes. You are also independent. Your personal doing or personal transaction is independent and separate from that of your news company, which is the main purpose of your news company is to purely or solely get information outside the country for news purposes and not for personal purposes. Let us proceed to the tax on banks and non-banks financial intermediaries. These are percentage taxes imposed on banks and non-banks financial intermediaries performing quasi-banking function. Okay, so we have here the different types of parang receipts, kumbaga, with different types of your gross receipts tax. Okay? So, expected if bank or car, even non-bank financial intermediaries, you are offering loans, of course. Offering loans, lending activities, finance leasing activities. So, in that case, hindi ka naman magpapa-loan or hindi ka naman magpapa-lending if wala kang ma-receive na benefit or income from it. So, we have here interest, commission, discounts from lending activities, and income from finance leasing of your banks and non-banks financial intermediaries. The basis for the tax rate would be the remaining maturity period of such loan, for example. So, If maturity period niya is less than or equal to 5 years, which means does not exceed 5 years, for example, merong 100,000 pesos na loan from A, and yung kanyang maturity period pa is 3 years na lang, in that case, you will be subject to 5%. That will be subject to your 5% of your gross receipts tax. Second, if the maturity period na remaining would be greater than 5 years or sobra pa ng 5 years, say for example that 100,000 pesos, meron pa siyang 7 years na maturity period, in that case, for the year, you have 1% lang na gross receipt tax rate. Okay, next, hindi na naman from lending activities or from loan ang income na nare-receive or ang receipts na nare-receive rin ng ating mga bank and non-bank financial intermediaries. Ano pa? Of course, pwede rin silang makatanggap ng pera from the dividend and equity shares or net income of their subsidiaries. It is, of course, imposed by our franchise tax of 0%. Parang wala naman nangyari kasi 0% siya. Next would be your royalties, rentals, and other items that are qualified to be stated under your gross income or any pa na mga activities ng receipts from the activities of the bank na kung saan naka-earn sila ng income. That will also be subject to 7%. Next will be your net trading gains. This is from your foreign exchange. The banks, many people would do forex or foreign exchange. Therefore, there will be trading gains, trading losses. For net trading gains, meron ring 7% of your gross receipts tax. So these are all the taxes under your tax on banks and non-banks financial intermediaries. And for other non-bank financial intermediaries, not performing quasi-banking but they're just non-bank financial intermediaries, hanggang dito lang sila. So, interest, commission, discounts from lending activities, and income from finance leasing, maturity period does not exceed 5 years, and maturity period exceeds 5 years. So, same rule, 5% and 1%. What I'm talking about is the 7th type of your percentage tax. This is your 6th. Let's proceed to our example for your tax on bank and non-bank financial intermediaries. Okay, so we have there an example in your handouts. The China Bank, a domestic bank, shows the following data for January 2010. You have given a table there. On the other side is the description of that from where does the receipt came from, and the second column would be what is the amount for the receipt. Okay, so we have first rentals from safety deposit boxes and real property acquired through foreclosure proceeding for bad loans. That is rentals. To recall our rates, we have here for rental 7%. So let's see, that is 880,000 times 7%. And that is 61,600. Next, net foreign exchange gains, difference between the value of foreign currency sold and purchased. This is under your net trading gain. Your net trading gain is subject to 7%. So that is why we are going to put here 220,000 times 0.07, that is equivalent to your 15,400. Next, net trading gain also for your trading securities, commercial papers, and other financial instruments. Same, we have 7%, 660,000 times 7%. That is, where is it? 46,200. I recommend that you also solve using your calculator in order for you to confirm if what I am writing here on the board is correct. Okay, next would be your trust fees. This is other income, so it's also subject to your 7%. That is 110,000 times 0.07. That is 7,700. Next would be your other services. For other services or other service fees, that would be your other income also, subject to 7%, that is 220,000. Wait. Okay, we jumped another one. Meron pang dividend from domestic corporation. So as we all know, dividend is 0%, so we're not writing it here now. Next, we have other service again, that is 220,000 times 0.07. You get an amount of 15,400. Next is your interest income. Ito yung magandang isolve because meron tayong requisite here. Let's see the maturity period. Meron siyang maturity period na 5 years and less at more than 5 years. If 5 years and less, you are subject to 5%. That is why 700,000 here will be subject to 0.05 and the amount is equal to 35,000 pesos. And the last one is more than 5 years, that is only subject to your 1%. So that is 800,000 times 0.01, or you get an 8,000 pesos amount. Let's total everything in order that we could get the total gross receipts tax. So we add everything and get the sum. The sum is 189,300 pesos. This is your total gross receipt tax. So your percentage tax for your bank and non-bank financial intermediaries performing quasi-banking function is 189,300 pesos for the month and year January 2010. I think we are now all good for your lecture video number 1, part 2. Congratulations for attending to this lecture video and for being so attentive and focused while the discussion is going on. Let's just recall what are the percentage taxes that we have already met for the 2 lecture videos. First is your 3% percentage tax on sale of goods, properties, or services. Second is your common carriers tax on domestic carriers. Third is your common carriers tax on international carriers. Fourth is your franchise tax. Fifth is your overseas communication tax. Sixth is your tax on bank and non-bank financial intermediaries performing quasi-banking functions. And seventh is your tax on other non-bank financial intermediaries. Thank you so much, and I hope that you review all those topics that we have already discussed in order for you to be refreshed and up during the next further videos. I will see you soon, and make sure to stay safe and God bless.